Now we're going to add our windows, and in this first clip what I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate just on creating the windows in this area according to those levels. And then if you develop enough technique, you can go ahead and finish the whole building yourself. And if not, I'm going to make another video clip that will go through it step by step. So let's get started. I'm going to jump back into Revit. And actually what I'll do is I'll go to level 1, and we're going to actually build the first window here. Actually, let me show you the south elevation again. Let me call that up. And remember, I'm going to mention a lot of things like going from level 1 to top of glazing, L1. I'm going to go from the parapet, or excuse me, the spandrel is going to go from top of glazing to the mezzanine. Another set of windows is going to go from the mezzanine to top of glazing. Another parapet is going to go from top of glazing just below top of parapet. So I'm going to be mentioning those terms a lot. So let's go to level 1 and actually just start building something. This is that front corner of the building that I'm indicating here. And what I'll do is I'm going to go to the wall tool and go to wall architectural, because I don't want to actually use a window. Let me just step back here. This is going to be kind of confusing. We're going to put a storefront. It's called Storefront Glazing. It's really a window system. But it behaves as a wall. It's considered a wall structure in Revit and a lot of BIM modelers. And I want you to remember that, because on one of our check drawings, that's going to come up as a question to you if you're not familiar with that idea of finding storefront glazing underneath the wall tool. And I've already selected it. It's down all the way down until you get past curtain wall to storefront. And now let's just take a look at what it's ready to start drawing. It says it's going to go from level 1 up to the top of the parapet, which is too high. We actually only want to go up to the top of the glazing at L1. And the glazing is the storefront that we're going to put in. And let's just take a look at what the style will be like. So I'm going to click on Edit Type and look at a couple of the characteristics. For instance, the minimum spacing between the window mullions will be 5 feet. The fixed distance of the height of the horizontal grid, that grid that goes sideways, is 8 feet. And that's a good distance to have, because that's where we're going to need to place doors in that. And we want to make sure we have enough clearance for a door system. So we're good enough to start with that right away. Be aware there's all kinds of things that you can change in the storefront in order to control its appearance. So I'll click OK, and we're ready to start drawing. So I'll zoom into the area we're going to draw, and I'll just start drawing. So I've indicated I caught the front center, and I'm going to draw this all the way over to the center here. And just take a moment to notice what we have here. I'm going to zoom in on this window, kind of describe what we're looking at here. This area in between, very close to this front edge, is the glazing. It's indicating probably 2 pieces of glass, and this is the front of the window. And actually this window is facing backwards. So if I was to just select this whole window assembly, let me see if I can do that, and I hit the space bar, it's going to flip it around to the right side. And that's typically because I draw from left to right, going in, and many times the software will then try to make an assumption about which way the inside and outside is. So that's one way you can go. You can go all the way around this plan and draw all of the walls that way. Or, my preferred way of helping us learn is to go to the model view and actually draw the same way, but now in 3 dimensions. So let me just delete this for a second. And let's redraw that wall, that storefront glazing. That'll come up. It's already set for us. And now let me zoom in here, and I'll show you how we can pick that same point. That blue is showing us the center line of the wall. We want our unit is set up to use the center line of the wall, location line, the wall center line. And so when we start drawing, we can start pulling that panel out. I'm going to hold down the center mouse button so I can move that up a little bit. And actually I'll hold the shift and I'll just rotate around. Let me just get this all back on the screen for us here. I've still got the drawing tool, and watch what happens. I'm going to come up and touch that edge, and I'm going to get that little box and the indication that I'm touching the wall, and I'll click off of it. And now I place that glazing there. And the nice thing is I get a really quick feedback that what it looks like in 3 dimensions. And once again, I can tell that it's facing the right way because I can see the, and I have this in a rendering mode that is not actually showing the line. So let me actually just change that for a second. I'm going to go to, I have it in realistic, and I'm going to go to graphic display options, and I have edges showing. All right, so it's actually showing them now. I thought I had them hidden. Let me go back in here. Sometimes it shows them and sometimes it doesn't. That's kind of annoying. Oh, I know, it's because I'm still in the drawing mode. Let me just click off the drawing mode. Maybe that'll show it. Well, there we go. I've selected it. Ah, it's very frustrating. It's showing it sometimes and not. But anyway, you can see now how that glazing is facing the front way. Like I said, you hit the space bar, it flips it, but that's actually the wrong way, and I'm going to space bar again and flip it back. Okay, so let's now create that spandrel. And that spandrel goes from L1, top of glazing L1, level 1, up to the mezzanine level, which is where we put our steel, or close to where we put our steel. So I'm going to grab a new piece of wall element, and we'll call it we're going to look for a generic piece of wall. A generic piece of 8-inch wall. And right away I'm going to change this. I'm going to edit it and duplicate it. So we want it to be 8-inch thick, but I'm going to give it another name. So I'm going to call it spandrel. And a spandrel, in case you haven't caught with the lecture yet, is that piece of solid material between windows between floor levels. And I go into that in much more detail in lecture. So now I've called that a spandrel. I'm not going to add any texture to it or anything yet. We'll come back and do that later. If all of our spandrel panels are done with this one, we can add any texture we want later on. So I'll click OK. And then I'll make sure we're set up ready to start constructing that. So I'm going to go from the base level, which is at the top of the glazing. I want to start drawing at the top of the glass. And I want to go up to the mezzanine level. And I want to draw according to the wall center line. And I'll just zoom in here and I'll catch that both being on the center of that glazing system and touching the edge of the wall. And then once again, I'll hold down the shift key and the center scroll button and just move this around until we can visualize what's going on over here. Now I don't need to do that. I could actually, let me just undo that a minute, and let's go back to the other position and show that with a little technique, you can start to do that without needing to have any hinting or visualization, because you'll get hinting. So I've started drawing that spandrel wall, and watch what happens when I come over here. You'll notice how I'm seeing it's squared, it's not showing any angle. All right, there's no angle showing, so I know I'm squared. That angle up here at the top is not appearing when I'm lined up perfectly. It's indicating that I'm lined up perfectly, and then when I touch that side of the wall, I get that little highlighting in that little box, and I can click it off. And if I was overlapping here at all, I'd get a warning from the software. Okay, so let's go now back and put another piece of storefront on. Now, once again, we're going to go from the mezzanine level, which is where we left off with the construction of the spandrel. And I'm going to just cancel out of this because it's telling me that I want to go from mezzanine to mezzanine, and that doesn't make sense. But I'm going to quickly fix that by going now up to level 2, top of glazing. And then I'll come here and start drawing that. Now, if I'm not getting any indications about these kind of touch points, it probably means that I don't have one of these levels set. For instance, let me explain, because this is where a lot of frustration comes in. Let's say I set level 1 and I come up here and nothing's happening. It's because it's trying to align down here. And I want to be at that correct point. And that correct point happens to be at the mezzanine level. So once again, we'll start drawing with our storefront. I'll stretch this over until I get the right hinting. And it was a little tricky there, but there I am at the front of it. And you'll notice the glazing, careful note, the glazing is facing in the right direction. And then the last thing we're going to do in this clip is go back to the spandrel. And now this time we're going to draw from the top of the glazing at level 2 all the way up to the parapet, top of the parapet. But we're going to hold it back a -2 feet because we don't want it to be quite as high, just for design reasons, quite as high as the top of the brick. And so I've selected that, and I'm ready to start drawing that piece of parapet wall. And I'll pull this back until, see, I'm lined up with the wall now as I go into it, but when I'm perfectly lined up, if I zoom in here, I'll get both the center line of that wall ghosted, and I'll get that I'm on the end point of the glazing system below. and I can click that off. And now I have the full construction of this. And we go to the south elevation and see what that looks like. So that's the basic technique for crafting all of these. And now it's just the kind of tedious nature of going through the whole building and finishing it off. And we'll pick that up and go through that in the next clip.